Paul Daley, the punch that punched his way out of the UFC. You know when someone tells you not to do the one thing that'll get you fired? Paul Daley did that thing. At UFC 113, Daley squared off with Josh Koscheck in a fight that had more bad blood than a telenovela. Koscheck wrestled, stoled, flopped, and trash-talked like he was auditioning for the villain role in an 80s wrestling promo. Daley he was losing again. Steaming after the final bell, instead of accepting defeat with a nod or handshake, Daley walked over and sucker-punched Koscheck. Like, "Welcome to Walmart!" Bam! Right in the face. On live TV, Dana White's reaction was as savage as it was. Final. He will never fight in the UFC again. Ever. No three-strike rule, no sit-down chat, just instant banishment. Daley went on to have a successful career in Bellator and other promotions, but that one punch is still more famous than any knockout he ever landed legally. Moral of the story: don't punch people after the fight unless you're trying to speedrun unemployment. Rousimar Palhares, the submission sniper who didn't know when to let go. If you're grappling with Rousimar Palhares, you're not just in a fight, you're in an orthopedic emergency. The man had heel hooks that could send you straight to the ER. Te problem. He refused to stop cranking, even after you tapped. The ref tackled him, and someone played a funeral dirge on a violin. Multiple times, Palhares locked in submissions and held them like his rent depended on it. Even seasoned fighters would scream in pain as he calmly destroyed ligaments, like he was twisting bottle caps. His final straw came in 2013, after holding a heel hook way too long on Mike Pierce. Dana White had seen enough. Palhares was banned for life from the UFC, and later kicked out of World Series of Fighting for, you guessed it, doing the same thing. It's like giving a guy a Lamborghini and realizing he only drives it into walls. Matt Riddle, high kicks and higher THC levels. Matt Riddle went 8-3 in the UFC, had fun fights, showed real grit, but there was one opponent he couldn't avoid. Marijuana drug tests. The man tested positive twice, even after getting warned the first time. When he failed again in 2013, the UFC said nah and cut him loose. Dana White called him one of the most unprofessional fighters he'd ever dealt with, which, coming from a guy who's dealt with the Diaz brothers, says a lot. But here's the twist. Didn't just fade into obscurity, he pulled a career pivot and became a WWE star. And not just a mid-carder, he was winning titles, wrestling shoeless, and grinning like he was perpetually on a beach in California. Turns out, getting high got him fired from MMA and hired in pro wrestling. There's a lesson in there somewhere. ... Maybe. Jason High pushed the ref, got pushed out. Jason High had a moment of weakness. After getting TKO'd by Rafael dos Anjos at UFC Fight Night 42, High shelved the referee. Not a full-on tackle. Just a frustrated little two-hand push. But in the UFC, that's a red button you don't press. Dana White fired him almost immediately. No hearing, no PR spin. You don't touch referees. Period. And just like that, High was out of the UFC. He later apologized, saying it was the heat of the moment, but the damage was done. MMA's golden rule. You can elbow someone's head from top mount, but you better not breathe heavy near the ref. Thiago Silva, the MMA fighter who turned real-life GTA, Thiago Silva's story reads like a rejected Fast and Furious script. In 2014, he was arrested after a standoff involving a gun, his estranged wife, and her new boyfriend who just so happened to be Silva's old BJJ coach. Allegedly, Silva showed up at the gym, threatened people, and things got so out of hand, SWAT had to get involved. The UFC cut him immediately. Then, surprised her, charges were dropped due to conflicting testimony. For a second, it looked like Silva might actually come back, but then some new video evidence surfaced, showing more disturbing behavior. And Dana was like, nope, we're done here. This wasn't about a loss or a failed test. It was about real-life danger. In the UFC, you can be wild in the cage, but outside, there's a limit. Silva blew past it at full speed. War Machine. The full nobody could defend this one. Isn't funny? Not even a little. Hong Kopenaber, known as War Machine, had a brief UFC stint before moving to Bellator. He was a brawler, always aggressive, always intense, and it turned out that intensity was hiding something much darker. In 2014, he brutally attacked his ex-girlfriend Christy Mack and her partner in an incident that made national headlines. The photos, the injuries, the police chase, it was horrifying. He was convicted of 29 felony counts, including kidnapping and attempted murder, and sentenced to life in prison. The UFC had released him years earlier, but this solidified his permanent erasure from the sport. No redemption arc, no comeback, just a cautionary tale of a man who let violence consume him. Igor Severino, the guy who bit his way out of the UFC. You only get one UFC debut. Igor Severino used his ... to bite his opponent. In March 2024, while grappling Andre Lima, Severino went full zombie and took a chunk out of Lima's arm. Cameras caught it. Replays confirmed it. Teeth marks were visible. Lima screamed the fight was called, and Dana White nuked Severino's UFC career from orbit within hours. Bonus twist: Lima got a $50,000 bonus just for being bitten. Probably the weirdest performance of the night check in UFC history. Igor's bite was worse than his punch, and now he is back on the regional scene with a reputation nobody wants. Jeff Molina caught in the betting web. Jeff Molina was flashy, funny, and looking like a future contender at flyweight. But then ... the betting scandal dropped. He was linked to James Krause's sketchy little Operation 1 that allegedly involved fighters and coaches placing bets based on insider injury info. Molina was implicated through suspicious betting activity and leaked messages that showed he wasn't exactly being discreet. The Nevada State Athletic Commission slapped him with a 3-year suspension, and the UFC effectively iced him. Betting scandals are bad enough, but when you're making jokes about rigging fights while under investigation, that's the kind of career sabotage you can't train out of. Caleb Starnes' death by running. Let's rewind to UFC 83. Caleb Starnes versus Nate Quarry. 3 rounds. Thousands of fans. One man ran the whole time. Like, literally, Starnes spent the entire fight circling the cage like he was doing laps, avoiding engagement like a man dodging an ex at a party. Quarry, increasingly confused and annoyed, started mocking him mid-fight, doing the zombie shuffle, jumping rope, anything to get a reaction. The crowd turned. Dana White turned. The UFC definitely turned. Starnes wasn't technically banned, but his phone stopped ringing the next day and hasn't rung since. Lesson: fight or flight, but not just flight. Luis Pajuelo, the science experiment that failed in 2024. Peruvian featherweight Luis Pajuelo popped for enough illegal substances to fill a lab report. The man tested positive for 19-orondrastarone and had testosterone levels that looked like he injected a chemical cocktail instead of eating breakfast. USADA hit him with a 2-year suspension, and the UFC gave him the boot immediately. Pajuelo claimed innocence, as most fighters do. But at some point, your blood work starts to look like a steroid advertisement, and even your coach is squinting. Moral of the story: don't try to be a science experiment, especially when the experiment ends with you banned and jobless. There you have it. 10 fighters who didn't just lose fights, they lost everything. Some broke rules, others broke people, and a few just broke common sense. If you want more wild stories from the world of MMA, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe and let the chaos continue.